Hello, and welcome back to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and today we're doing another spotlight on plugins. We are looking at JW Staff Polyphony. Now, recently I did a video on the 27.3 update, and I talked a lot about the JW plugins because that's one of the major draws to that update. Finale now includes 8 of the JW plugins in a new menu in your plugins menu called JW Tools. So even if you never had the original JW plugins, if you update to 27.3 and you now have this new menu item JW Tools, and there's 8 plugins. They're basically copies of the original JW plugins with a lot of fixes made, a lot of stuff done to make them compatible with the recent version of Finale vis-a-vis Smoofle fonts and all that stuff. And they've also been fixed, they'll work with Apple Silicon natively, so yeah, it's definitely a good thing that we have these 8 particular JW tools. Now, I've talked about a couple of these already in previous Spotlight on Plugin videos, namely the JW Change and the JW Copy Part layout, which, in my opinion, might be the 2 most important JW plugins in existence. I think the JW Staff Polyphony plugin is probably the next most important one, so I'm going to cover that right now. If you've never used any of these JW plugins, this one in particular, you're going to kind of scratch your head saying, man, how come I didn't know about that one previously? But it has been around for a while as a third-party plugin, but now it's included, so there's absolutely no reason for you to not make use of this. So let's just dive straight in and check out what it is. So we'll choose JW Staff Polyphony here, and we get this sort of unassuming window. It's got 4 categories of polyphonic manipulation goodness. We can do things with layers, with staff, chord lines, and percussion lines. There is one little option in the bottom left-hand corner that's respace if necessary. You can probably keep this on unless you know that you have a lot of manual spacing in your score. Then maybe you want to uncheck that so you don't accidentally screw something up. But that's really the only, overall option. Once you open these tabs, there are many things that you can do, and I'm going to try and go through some of them or try and at least touch on all of them. There's a lot to be done here, so I don't think I'm going to cover every single possible scenario, but I think you'll get a good idea of what's going on. And it's really simple to use this plugin. Essentially what you do is you just make a selection of music and then choose what you want to do to that selection music and then press apply and you're good to go. So without any further ado, let's just dive into some of these functions here. So I'm going to open the layers section here, and I'm going to make a selection of music in my flute 1 and 2 shared staff here. And there's a lot of things we can do with layers. We can copy, move, swap, remove, keep, merge, split from voices, expression, merge. I'll kind of explain what these things are, but very simply, the copy layers option here, it is sort of self-explanatory, a lot of these options, so I'll just kind of quickly go through this, but you're basically copying from layer 1 to layer 2. You have the option to override existing contents. You can copy layer assigned expressions and all that stuff. Just kind of depends on how you want to deal with this, but let's just leave those blank for now and simply just copy from layer 1 to layer 2, and you'll see that in my flute music, we just made a duplicate of that flute part in that shared staff, right? The move option kind of does what you would think. You just select move and then you choose which layer you want to move from and which layer you want to go to. There's some sub options here for conflicting information. Again, I'm just going to kind of speed through some of this because it would take me forever to really explain all this in intimate detail, but simply just move from layer 2 to layer 1. This happens to me all the time. I forget to switch layers and I put the notes in the wrong layer, so this is an easy thing to do, and just like that, it moves it. There's also the swap layers, and now this comes in handy a lot. Sometimes you may get screwed up with your layers, particularly in piano music. I put this little piano part in here where I've got my layers all screwed up. So this is very simple as well. You do have to make sure that there's only 2 layers checked here. So let's uncheck 3 and 4 so that we're just swapping layers 1 and 2, and really easily you'll see that it will do just that. Now, I should point out that all of these options, copy, move, and swap, now these are doable natively in Finale. In the edit menu, there's this move copy layers window, and it kind of does the same thing. You can choose to move contents of 1 into 2, 2 into 1. I think I've talked about this little utility before. You can also copy, which is duplicating the copy here. And also by choosing move and choosing these 2 options, you're basically swapping layers 1 and 2. So it's not like these functions are not possible natively in Finale outside of this plugin, but with this plugin, you do do get some extra options here. You get these options for conflicting content and stuff like that. So just a little bit of extra stuff going on there. And also, it all exists in this sort of modeless window, so you can see that every time I go out of the window, I can do a thing, and the window will stay open after I hit apply, unlike the other one where you hit OK and the window goes away, so you'd have to keep opening it. So that's another advantage of doing it here. Now, the next few options we have remove, keep, merge, and split. Again, that's a little bit self-explanatory. There are some sub-options, delete layer assigned expressions. You have some options under your merge, and you have some options under your split. But really quickly, if we go to the oboe part here, if we just wanted to remove, layer 2, just select layer 2, hit apply, and just like that, it goes away. We could choose to instead keep layer 2, and it does basically the opposite of that. And there's also merge. Merge would basically take two layers that are kind of homophonic like this and just put it into one layer. And we can hit apply, and you'll see that now the two layers just turned into one layer there. And then there's this split option. Oops, let me redo that. Actually, let me do this. Sorry. Go back. The split basically undoes the merge, so I shouldn't have undone that. There you go. And then split will do the opposite. Yeah, so that's what the split does. Again, there's some sub options here, and then you have this split from voices. There is a thing in Finale other than layers where you can kind of have voices, and some people still use this. Layers have different types of advantage over voices, so more often than not, people use layers, but sometimes you'll see this in old Finale files where this is done with voices, and you might need to convert these to layers. Well, this is how you would do that. With the split from voices, you can just hit apply, and you'll see that it will turn the second voice in layer 1 into layer 2. You'll have to do something with your rest there, of course, but that's the split from voices option. And then you have this last one here, expression merge. There are occasions when if you're duplicating notes from one layer to another, you sometimes end up with like duplicate expressions. This can happen on XML imports. There's a lot of situations where this can occur. And with this little expression merge, basically it'll look for similar expressions in the same exact spot, and just hit apply, and it will get rid of the extra ones. Now, of course, I did this on 2 measures which had only one expression, so obviously it's easy to delete it. But as with all of these things, and I'm only doing this on 2 measures, imagine 8, 16 bars of this type of notation that you want to convert. This plugin makes it really simple to do it all at once, because you can just run it on however big of a selection that you need. So. All right, so that's basically the layers section here, all of these options. Now, again, some of these things are possible in the Move Copy Layers utility here in the Edit menu, so it is duplicating some of it. And also some of this is kind of duplicated now in some of the RGP Lua scripts. There are a lot of RGP Lua scripts, and some of these are kind of shortcuts to these. Like there is a layers swap 1 and 2, which is it's a quicker way to do this. You don't have to navigate through the Staff Polyphony menu, but you do have to have this RGP Lua set up. And if you're really slick about it, you can even set up Keyboard Maestro scripts like I do. So I have one. All I have to do is press Option L, and for me 3 will swap the layers. So basically that's a shortcut to the Lua script, although again it's just sort of a duplicate function of the JW Staff Polyphony. So yeah, there's several ways to do some of these things, but one advantage of this Staff Polyphony tool is that again this window stays open, and you can kind of go back and forth in here and do many things all at once. So all right, so anyway, that's the layers section. Let's take a look at the Staves section. So the Staves section is mostly going to be dealing with multiple staves, like data on multiple staves. So the first one here is the merge. So if you have this part in your Violin 1 and 2, and for some reason you wanted to put both of these parts in Violin 1 and just make Violin 1 divisi or something like that, you can use the Staves merge. And when you select this, again, you have all these options. You can choose to merge it into the top staff or the bottom staff. For mismatched actions, you have different things you can do here. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these because there's just too many permutations of what can be done. Some options for removing sources from layer 1 only, layers in pitch order, all that stuff. So, but very simply, you know, if you have two lines like this, you can just merge these two into the top staff, and you'll see that now you have that Divisi Violin I part. Sometimes it doesn't completely remove everything, so sometimes you'll have to delete a rogue expression or something like that. The next option here, let me just undo, is merge to layers. So very similar, except now we're going to put it in two separate layers. Again, you can choose from top or bottom staff, and you'll see that you'll get your two options here. And of course, it does give you a duplicate expression. Of course, we could always do our expression merge and get rid of that. So again, just the advantage of having this tool always open. And then let's look at the next one here, the split, which is actually a really nifty part of this whole thing. Basically, this will split chords like this into multiple staves, very similar to the explode music function in Finale. But there's, again, with the JW Staff Polyphony, there's a lot of different options, including what to do with tied notes and the direction, and you know what you can do. You can do with pairs and split pairs and stuff like that. So just really quickly, you know, just how this works. You have this option for single notes as unison if you want. And so in this one bar here, I have three parts, and we can split it out, and you'll see that it will put it into the three staves like that. In this part here, you know, there's only two parts, so if we do the single notes as unison, you'll see that second note get put down here. But if you have that unchecked, then you'll get a rest in the second violin. So there's some options going on here with the single notes and all this stuff. There's also another cool option in here called Simplify Adjacent Notes. And in particular, I really like this merge same pitch option. So if we do that exact same thing that I just did here and hit apply, you'll see that it turned those two B flat half notes into a whole note. So that's really cool. Maybe not the best thing to do in this case, but I think actually, let me see something. If you have this tied, you know, there's also the merge tied notes option here, so that, you know, again, it's just a little bit of flexible options right there. I do want to go up here and show you something else in the split here. Let's just go here and down, and let's just talk about the pairs and the split pairs. So I have these three measures in my oboe and my French horns with four notes each. So let's just say we're going to take these oboe chords, right? And if you can imagine yourself kind of writing this way, if this is how you want to write, just, you know, if you're going to say, well, I'm going to put the oboes and clarinets, I'm just going to chunk them in on the keyboard all at once, and I'll split it out later. This is a great thing to do. You can just do pairs like this, and this will basically split this out. So there's two notes on each staff, and we hit apply, and so now you have your two sets of oboes and your two clarinets in pairs like that. So that's a really nifty option too. And then for French horn writing, there's an extra option here, which you can do split pairs. So this will split them 1, 3, 2, and 4 for your traditional horn scoring here. And you just hit apply, and you'll see that the first and third get put on the top staff, and the second and fourth pitches get put on the second staff here. So that's a really nifty thing to do that. I don't believe that the explode music function has that type of split pair situation. No, it doesn't. So again, one more advantage to JW Staff Polyphony here. There's also a wide and closed pair, so that would put 1, 4, and 2 and 3 together, just like that. I'm not 100% sure of the context of that, but I suppose maybe in some woodwind stuff, you can kind of do this in closed type of situation. So that's an option as well. There's also the split from layers. So let's just go back to my Violin I part here. So I've got two parts here in layers. Again, very simple. It just puts it, you know, turns that into two different parts in Violin I and II. And also nicely puts that second part in the first layer, which is probably what you'd want to do anyway. I will say I was trying this before, and you do have to be aware that the split from layers doesn't really work all that well if there's more than 2 layers. So if I had 3 layers here, you would think that it would put it in Violin I, II, and viola, but it doesn't quite do it the way you think it should. So It's really just good for 2 layers. There's also the split from voices. Again, you know, as with the piano part, voices is an alternative to layers. So in this case, you can do you know, the same basically the same thing, and it will take that passage and put it into Violin I and Violin II in this case. And then one of my favorite parts about this staff section is the swap. Very, very simple thing to do. Like if you've got your viola and cello lines here and you decide that you want the viola to play the cello part and the cello to play the viola part, without this tool, it's kind of a pain in the neck. You copy this, put it here, copy this, put it here, and then take this one and put it here, right? But with the swap staffs, really easy. It just swaps them. So that's really cool. Again, I'm just doing these 2 measures at a time, but imagine, you know, 8, 16 bars of this or something, how quickly you can make that happen. So, and then so let's move on to the 3rd category here, which is chord lines. Let's just open that up. So in this chord line section, there's all these options here, and there are a lot of sub options. Again, I'm just going to try and breeze my way through this, but you can definitely you know, look through these options and do a bunch of things. But really simply, just the add chord lines. Basically, you can say, well, let's add a 3rd above the top note. There's this reference thing which is really great. Maybe I'll show you that in a second. But basically, what you can do is just add a 3rd above. And just like that, it adds a 3rd. You can also do delete. You can say delete the bottom line, delete the top line, a bunch of different things that you can do here. You can also apply it to different layers. So we can just delete the bottom line here. Oh, you do have to make a selection. That's why that didn't work. There we go. And just like that, you're deleting. The one thing I meant to mention about the add is that the options that you have here for interval, these are unfortunately all diatonic, and it only goes from second to an octave. So if you wanted to add, you know, a chromatically major, you know, chromatic major 3rd above this, you can't actually do this with this plugin. There is the transpose function in the utilities menu that will actually allow you to do this. So if you actually choose chromatic and say major 3rd, preserve original notes. This is the key to this, is you're actually adding the transposition instead of just actually transposing the notes. That would actually give you the chromatic major 3rd addition. With the JW Staff Polyphony, you only have diatonic options, unfortunately. It would actually be kind of cool if they added the chromatic versions to this as well, but alas, we just have diatonic here. But we do have other options here. We also, I didn't even mention this, there's the, this is sort of a filter, so you can decide you only want to add the 3rd on the beats, off the beats, only on whole notes, only on half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, etc. So there's a bunch of different extra options here that that doesn't exist in the native transpose function of Finale. One other thing I wanted to say about the delete option is that in this delete mode, there is this unison option, which actually really comes in handy. Occasionally you'll get stuff like this, especially if you're working with XML or MIDI files. You might get some junk and you get these super duper annoying unison lines like this because for whatever reason they just doubled it or something and it ended up in the same staff. So I've done this several times, and this plugin is invaluable for this because you can just choose chord lines, delete unisons, and it'll actually get rid of them for you, which is really, really handy. I just wanted to point that out. There's some other modes here you can do. You can delete, again, the octave on the bottom. You can delete a custom line. So if you wanted to say delete the 2nd line from the top, you can do it like that as well. So then we have this drop option, which does one very specific thing. It drops a specific line 1 octave down. So really the only thing you can do with this is drop the 2nd line down an octave, drop the 3rd line down an octave, the 4th line down, or the 2nd and 4th line down an octave. Maybe can come in handy with piano parts. Let's say you want to drop the 4th line down an octave, and then we can split this out so that we're going to put a bass line here. I'll show you how to do that in a second with some of these other options. But you can see exactly what it did is it took that 4th line and dropped it an octave, right? We could, for example, take the 3rd line and drop it an octave and get some different results with that. But that's basically what it's doing. It's just transposing one of these lines, or the second and fourth line specifically. It's just dropping it down an octave, again with these similar type of filters here. So actually, let me just do that. Let's go here and drop this fourth line down an octave. And then let's talk about the keep. Now the keep is basically saying I want to just keep a certain line in the chord. Sort of the opposite of delete, where you can say I want to delete the top line. Well, the keep says I can keep the top line, right? So in this case, I'm going to basically copy the piano part from here to here. And in the left hand, what I'm going to do is say I want to keep the bottom line, right? So we can hit apply, and now basically you've turned that that bottom note into the bass line here. And of course we can go into the right hand and maybe go back to that delete and say delete bottom line and hit apply. So that would be kind of a nifty way using JW Staff Polyphony to turn what was a 4-note chord here into a 3-note chord on the right hand with a bass line. So just an interesting idea there. Now, again, one of my favorite functions in this plugin in the chord lines is the rotate. This is really handy if you write a lot of piano music. If you've decided that you don't like the inversion of these chords, you can say, well, just rotate them down or whatever, and you'll see the whole chord get rotated down. You can, of course, go up. So you can use that on 3-note chords. You can use that on 4-note chords as well. And it will put basically it takes the top note and puts it on the bottom, which is really handy. The one thing about this rotate function is that if the chord spans an octave or more, like these chords, then the plugin doesn't do anything. So no matter what you do here, it's not gonna work. So in order for the rotate to work, the span of the chord has to be less than an octave. And then there's the transpose. And what's interesting about this is that it allows you to transpose specific notes within the chord. So you can first of all say, just transpose the entire chord. If you want to go up a second, you can take all of that and just transpose it up a second. But you can also choose to say, okay, just take the top line and transpose it down a second. And you'll see that that will do exactly that. You could even get fancy. You could say, let's choose, you can do bottom line, top and bottom. You can choose top custom line from top. So you can say 2 space 3 here. This is meaning that you're going to take the second and third line in this chord, and let's transpose it up a second. And just like that, you'll see the second and third notes get transposed up a second. So really a lot of flexibility here. Again, and you also have all of these options here. So if you had a passage with different rhythms and you only wanted to do this on the half notes or the quarter notes or whatever, you could do that. Again, you can choose to only apply it to certain layers, and you choose all of these intervals. Again, these are diatonic. There are no chromatic options, so your only options here are seconds through octaves, but really, really flexible, this transpose in the chord lines section. And then there's this option for split unisons. Again, if you do end up with a unison note situation like this, this is a little bit different than just deleting the unisons. What you're going to do is actually split them out into octaves. That's the only thing that this function does, is it splits it into octaves. And you can choose to split them upwards or downwards and just hit apply, and you can see that your unisons now get split into octaves. So that's what the split unisons do. Now, I'm going to kind of put all of this together for you in a really interesting sort of demo. I've kind of set up the situation in my string section on the 3rd page here, where basically I've just entered these chords in the Violin I section, and I kind of want to filter them out all the way down through all 5 string parts. So I'm going to do some interesting things here, and just follow along and see what I'm doing so you can kind of get a sense of the power of this particular plugin. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of them, and then I'm going to go into Chord Lines, and I'm going to do add an octave below the bottom note, add below the bottom note, because basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the double bass line sort of as a double of the cello but an octave lower. I'm going to uncheck layer 2 because I don't want layer 2 to be affected there, and I'm going to go apply. And you'll see that I've just added that note an octave below the lowest note there. Now this 5th bar with the layers is a little bit unique, so I'm going to do something here. I'm actually going to copy this into the violas for a second, and we're going to continue to deal with measure 5 here. So in the Violin I here in layer 5, I'm going to go into layers, and I'm going to remove layer 2 because we don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to do the opposite here in the viola part. I'm going to remove layer 1. I'm also going to move from layer 2 into layer 1. And I'll come back to that in a second. Then we're going to go to these measures 1 through 4 again. We're going to go into the staves section and we're going to go into the split. And we're going to choose the 1 line per staff option again, split direction down. And again, I have 5 lines there, so all 5 of those notes are going to get distributed down the string section just after I hit apply. And just like that, it copies everything, including the articulations, the expressions, the hairpins, so all real good stuff. And I'm going to do the same thing with these last 3 measures to do the exact same situation. Then I'm going to take my Violin I part. I'm actually going to copy it into the double bass part here. In the Violin I part here, I'm going to go into chord lines and I'm going to drop the bottom. Sorry, I'm going to delete the bottom line. That's what I meant to say. And I'm going to go into the double bass line and I'm going to keep the bottom line. Just like that. I'm actually going to lower this an octave. We can do that with the shortcut 8. And then the last thing I need to do is just split these staves. So just split here, 1 line per staff, and then the same thing here, 1 line per staff. So in a few steps, I managed to turn those 4 note chords that I had in the Violin I section into basically an orchestration in my string section here with some manipulations, basically only using JW Staff Polyphony and some simple copying and pasting. The specific method that I did, there's probably different ways to do this. I probably could have done things differently in a different order to get there faster, but this is just sort of how I kind of very quickly just set this up. But I just wanted to kind of demonstrate that to show you the power of this and how you can get from, 4-note chords in 1 line into basically a fully fleshed out string section for these 8 bars. So. And then the last section here is for percussion lines. There's not that many options, and I'm going to go over into the next page here. I think this is maybe mostly useful for drum set parts, but it can be used on basically any non-pitch percussion staff. There's some things you can do with it, and once you have the measures selected here, when you go to the add, delete, and keep options, these note types to add or note types to delete or note types to keep options will be specific to the staff that you're selecting. So if I had selected a different percussion staff with different note types in it, this entire list would change. So this is definitely context sensitive. And so you can do things like, you can add a crash cymbal on the beats or something, right? And apply it to only layer 1, and you can see that you'll get crash cymbals on each beat. Maybe not the most useful thing to do in this scenario, but you can also, do partial selections so that you can just add the crash cymbal on beat 1 of the first measure there or something like that. So there's some options there. We can also do some things. Let me just redo that. We can also do some things if we wanted to get rid of that crash cymbal. Just that would be the delete. The thing about this delete is that if you delete, I think that's the ride symbol here in this selection, it will delete it, but it will actually, I also had on beats, so that's why that happened. I was going to show you that if you had it on any note, it'll delete them, but it will leave you with a bunch of rest, which isn't all that helpful. But you can use the normal layers task for this as well. So if you wanted to remove layer 2 or layer 1, you can certainly do that and get the result that you probably were thinking you were going to get by deleting the ride from this particular window. So same thing with keep. You can decide to keep certain things here. Again, there is some flexibility with how to process notes, be it they on the beats or off or whole notes or whatever. So there is some functionality here. The one thing that I wish they had in this was a percussion transposition function, but it doesn't exist in this JW Staff Polyphony. But if you're unfamiliar with this, in the utilities menu, there actually is a transpose percussion notes window. I actually did a whole video on this in the percussion section, but I'll just show you really quickly. You just choose the ride symbol here, and if you wanted to change your ride to hi-hat, it's easy enough to do that, and it will just move that to the hi-hat line. So that function seems like it should exist in the JW Staff Polyphony, but it doesn't. But yeah, so the Percussion Lines is a little bit on the short side in this particular plugin, but you know, certainly the layers and the staves and the chord line situation is really fleshed out in this plugin. So yeah, so there you go. So that is JW Staff Polyphony. As I said, you can kind of see the power of it. It's just, there's so many things you can do and manipulate with this. And again, it's the key to this is doing this over large sections of measures will really save time compared to just trying to manually fix things or copy and paste things and kind of do it by brute force. Sometimes this JW Staff Polyphony has some options in it that just will make a task very simple. So I encourage you, now that you have it, if you do have 27.3, everybody that has 27.3 will have this plugin, so I highly encourage you to play around with it, learn what's in it, and get used to using it, because especially if you do things with large orchestral scores and stuff like that, this is just a really killer app. All right, so that's all I have to say about that. Again, my name is Jason. As always, please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you soon on the next video.